All right, here we go. So, got some tier limits, Ishizu tier limits. This is a very skillful match, which is why I'm showing this one because of how skillful this match is, and I think it's good for the culture. Now, every once in a while, I do get a dumbass that goes into my comment section and says, "Bro, how's it skillful? It's tier zero." Like, shut the fuck up, you dumbass. Like, for one, bro, this is not Fluanderees. Like Fluanderees, basically you can be no skill and win all the time against anybody. Like Fluanderees is basically like that easy. But this requires a little bit more thinking. Actually, a lot more thinking. And I'll showcase this. I'll showcase why this requires a lot more thinking because you can really fuck this up. So I go Scream right here, activate Sheeran, going to send the Kelbeck, and then this is going to mill, and then Merly's going to activate, allowing me to do a fusion summon. And then I go. Now let me just showcase this real quick. Let's look at the chains, right? Chain link 1 Sheeran right here to summon itself out, right? Chain link 2 Merly right here. Chain link 3 Kelbeck, which means I'm going to mill 5. Merly is going to be able to fusion summon. The goal is to get something else in the graveyard with Merly, or just use Rhino Heart that's in the graveyard, right? Um, let's just show this, right? So I mill, and then I use the Merly. I use the Merly that's in my graveyard with the Rhino Heart, just like I just said, to go into Kikalos. And then Scream is going to mill more. It ends up hitting a Gito. So hopefully y'all saw what I just did, right? So I hit a Gito. Let's start building our chains all over again. Now my opponent is going to activate Shaddoll Beast, which is going to draw a card. He's going to activate Heartbeat. He's also going to activate Havness. And then I activate Rainbow Bridge of Salvation. This will grab me my field spell. Now, look. I still, look right here. I still have not used my normal summon yet, right? I'm going to activate Keldo right here. Shuffle back 5 of his cards in his graveyard. Yes, 5. Yes, 5 cards. Because Exchange of Spirit is in my graveyard. So all 5 of his cards go back to his graveyard. That allows me to grab a turtle. And it allows me to grab Pearl Areno. Now, I know y'all saw that. It just went through a ton of effects and some of his effects didn't hit, which is why I shuffled some of those cards back, right? He has no resources in his graveyard, which means he has to play from his hand. If he's going to fusion summon, it would have to be something in his hand plus what's in his graveyard, right? That's why I shuffle everything back, because I shuffle back his bricks as well. So, if he hits the same cards twice, basically their effects don't go off. Just like basically a free meal. Like he milled them for nothing, which is why I put them all back, right? So I go ahead and activate. He is going to activate his Suliak. He's going to activate the Hollow. And then he is going to activate his Merly. And I do exactly the same thing all over again. Use the effects of Medora to send everything in his graveyard back into the deck. His Merly fizzles. He sends a card. He adds a card, which I don't care. He added Havness, right? So when I go to activate a monster effect on the field, he can then activate his Havness. Let's see what I put on the field before he can activate that Havness. I go Millenniumizer Strict. So if he uses the effect of Havness, Havness will basically activate, and then I'll be able to trigger my Millenniumizer Strict, grabbing his Havness, negating it. Activate Rhino Heart. Of course, now he can't activate his Havness, my boy. And then I chain block right here, right? Which doesn't really matter. I chain block this, doesn't really matter. And then I grab my own Havness. Send Rhino Heart. I send the last Sheeran right here. That Sheeran look, and I still hadn't even normal summoned yet. It won't let me show it, but I still hadn't even normal summoned yet. Now let's take a look at what is about to transpire if he didn't quit. If he wasn't going to quit, I could go into tier limits, um, Rhino Heart, not Rhino Heart, tier limits, Rukalos. I could go into Rukalos, which is a special summon negate. So I would have a special summon negate on the field. Polareno, put that onto the field right here, right? Then this would grab me the Merly. Then I could send this card to the graveyard to special summon Merly onto the field. That mills 8 more cards out of my deck. Right? Now I've already used all 3 of my fusion summons. So I wouldn't be able to use more fusion summons, but that's how I get more cards into the graveyard that'll be impactful for me, hopefully milling a diviner. Then I could go into something like I could possibly go into something like um, Sprite Elf and then revive Diviner and then try to go into Baron the Floor or something like that. But I don't have to do that. But that's just what I could potentially do. Um, but getting to Sprite Elf would definitely be very impactful for my opponents. Also, I got 2 level 4s on the field, so I can go into Dweller. And yes, I still have the turtle right here, so I could just normal summon that and use that as material with my Merly to go into my Sprite Elf. So I got plays 4 days. Dweller would have been underneath Sprite Elf. My Millenniumizer Strict would have been under Sprite Elf. Then on top of that, I still hadn't even used tactics yet. My opponent's been playing on my turn. I can use tactics to draw 2 cards or to get an important piece out of his hand. His graveyard would have been turned off the second his turn started because I would have just dwellered him immediately. Then I had Exchange of Spirit in my graveyard, and all I would have had to do is shuffle back my millers, basically, and then basically trigger the mill effects to then mill more cards, and then once I mill more cards on my opponent's turn, I can then set Gravekeeper's Trap directly onto the field, so then that way their graveyard will be turned off on the following turn after that as well. And my opponent wants no smoke, so I had plays 4 days. I know it didn't look like it because I'm running out of my summons, but I still had not used my normal summon. If you don't believe me, go back and look. Did not use my normal summon. Now, let's look at the deck that I was playing. I think this is like the perfect deck so far. Like, this deck has not failed me. This has been the like, I've been tweaking this, and this is the best that it's been for me so far. Now, I run this because I think it's funny. I like me seeing this at 1. I think it's funny as fuck. The funny thing is, I was actually playing this one beforehand, and I put this one in just because they limited it to 1. But I like this card better even before they did what they did to this card. This card, like, putting this to 1 is goofy to me. That's like Konami goofy as fuck for that. Putting this shit to 1, like, all it does is just discard to grab the polymerization. As you can see, I don't even run polymerization. The polymerization is for the Guardian Chimera play, which is already like just adding bricks to your deck. I don't need them bricks in my deck, my boy. This card and this card do the exact same thing otherwise. This one, I would agree that this one would be a little bit better because for the reason that this is a level 4, which means that I hadn't used my normal summon yet. If I had drawn this card, I could just normal summon this shit out, which could help me go into Dweller. Hopefully that makes sense, right? So, it can help me go into Dweller, and then I can use it as fusion material afterwards, on my opponent's turn once I activate Dweller, or on my turn when I activate Dweller, I can just release this card right here and then use it as fusion material later. So yeah, this card very, very, very powerful. Does the same thing as this one, but I know a lot of people use this one for that polymerization effect, and I think that the nerf is like funny as shit. It's goofy as fuck. It's just like the nerf of the instant fusion. which I don't really give a fuck about. I was doing this play like this anyways. Instant fusion, once it gets milled, like it's basically a dead card. You got to try to recycle it using your shufflers and all of that bullshit. But if you mill these cards, you automatically just get your field spells. So I like this better anyways, my boy. As y'all can see, I did use this card in the deck to get to my Polymerano, Perlarano. So yeah, Exchange of Spirit, super, super powerful in this deck. I know a lot of people don't run it, but me, I love it. For the simple fact that if I hit a Gravekeeper's Trap, like, this shit fucks over so many decks. There are decks that don't realize that they can't play through this shit until it's time for them to try to play through it. Like, they'll try to make their plays and then they'll forget that they can't special summon from the graveyard. They think that, oh, it just turns off the effects in the graveyard. Them motherfuckers be sitting there holding not polymerization, but Monster Reborn, can't use it. They'll be sitting there trying to use some effect to pull a monster from the graveyard and summon it onto the field with some other No. Like, they'll use an on-field effect, revive monster from the graveyard, and then they'll just quit immediately after when they read. Because they're just sitting there like, why can't I summon my monster? And I know that's what they're thinking because they quit right after. But yeah, super, super powerful card right here. And it's so funny to watch people try to play through this shit and then lose. It's so funny. I do run these for this and this. Now, Winda can be summoned using the Shaddoll Beast. Now, you can take Shaddoll Beast out of the deck if you want to. If you want this to be closer to 40 cards, you can 100. Like this, all this does really is just draw you one card. And then you can use this card as a way to basically go into Winda. So yeah, that's all it really does. Draw you one card. So you don't actually have to run it. You can actually just run 2 Beast King of the Swamps. Or, I mean, you could even run this shit at 1, if I'm being honest. But I think it's just funny, like, using this and getting that free draw. Because sometimes that one draw can be like, your hand is getting low, your opponents start milling yourself plus them, and you don't have nothing in your hand for follow-up, and then they end up milling this card, and then they give you that perfect card that you need. Like, I've had somebody basically mill some shit, and then I end up getting Havness, and then full punish them and won. Like, all because they milled this card. Like, it's happened. I've even made videos, like, showcasing where you see this card comes in clutch for me. So I think it's just funny. So yeah, this card gets me access to the field spell. Field spell is basically a really good starter. So running this at 3, actually hitting this, and then being able to grab fusion material basically from this, plus grabbing the field spell, is like insane, because then you could just use Rhino Heart, normal summon that out. Basically send something, and then you can shuffle this plus whatever that monster is. Keep your Rhino Heart on the field, go into Kitkalos, and then you can make plays from there. So it's like insane. Then you can send something like Merly to the graveyard, and then activate the Kitkalos. Don't activate the Merly, revive the the Merly onto the field, and then you could just make some crazy, insane plays. So like the plays that you can make, insane. Skillful deck. Now I might even showcase that, because that's stuff nobody talks about. Like people talk about this deck and say how powerful it is, but nobody actually like truly shows like what this deck can really do. And when they do show it, it's not in a way that's like super understandable. There are lines of combos in this deck that are like very consistent that you can do, and people always show like these very inconsistent combos, but there are combos that can 100% be done off of one card, and it's the same combo every single time, and it'll give you the same inboard. Now, could the inboard be better? Yeah, inboard could 100% be better. Doing a different combo line, could it be risky? Yeah, if you were try to extend more, yeah, it could be risky. Matter of fact, let's look at my opponent's deck real quick before we do anything different. This is what they were running, and hopefully that explains why they lost as well. Put a lot of bricks in their deck. They're running a 52 card brick deck right here. If you're going to run something like this, I would recommend taking these out and putting grass looks greener. Might as well at that point. His deck is hella fucking bricky. Like, I honestly see why he scooped. Like, he had a lot of cards in his hand, and he scooped. That's tough. He's running Gravekeeper's Trap as well, but I highly doubt he would have actually beat me. Now, let's actually showcase something real quick. I'm gonna just go to Rick of Fairies. Why not? We'll go to Shizu tier limits. Alright, so looks like I end up hitting Rhino Heart right at the beginning. So let's show the combo. So activate Rhino Heart right here. And then we are going to send, let's send Sheeran. Send Sheeran to the graveyard, activate Sheeran effect, and this will allow me to go into Kit Kalos, right? Now, I can leave Rhino Heart onto the field and then use the King of the Swamp. Now, this is basically like the combo that you can do every single turn. Now, I can activate this effect right here. This effect allows me to, if this card is special summon, you can take one tier limits card and add it from your deck to your hand or send it to the graveyard. Now, right here, basically, you got two plays. You can add Sulliek or Crime, whichever one you prefer. Most of the time, I would add Sulliek right here. Set that card and then just pass turns. That's all you got to do. Pretty much pass turns, and then you're set up to play on your opponent's turn once they summon a monster or activate a monster effect. Or you could go Crime. If you go Crime, basically do the same thing. This one just works a little bit differently because when you negate the activation, you can shuffle that card into the deck, send one monster from your hand to the graveyard. So this one's a little bit harder to play, especially if you don't have nothing for real good follow-up. But this one, however, you can send one monster you control to the graveyard, which would be the Kit Kalos. So that's why I would do Kit Kalos and Sulliek, because this one can basically send your Kit Kalos, which will mill 5 cards for you, so you can get some crazy milling going. So you want to pay attention to, do you have a monster in your hand that can start milling or that can make some real serious plays? So yeah, you want to think about that. Now, for the other play, let's do the Merly play, right? The Merly play is you would add Merly to your hand and then activate Kit Kalos right here. Sending Kit Kalos to the grave to special summon out your Merly. What does that do? Mill 5 with your Kit Kalos. Mill 3 with your Merly. That's 8 cards milled. And would you look at that? Now, let's look at how nice this is, right? So I can activate, let's activate, let's activate Scream. Then we're going to activate Havness. And then we're going to activate Kelbeck. I'm not going to activate this. Well, you know what? Oh, screw it. I'm going to activate this Merly right here. Why not? And then I can go into Rule Colossus right here using the Merly in my grave plus the Kick Colossus, because the Kick Colossus effect is already gone off. That's going to mill some cards, and would you look at that? This is what I was talking about with the consistency part. Look, I hit Exchange of Spirit in clutch fashion, allowing me to set Gravekeeper's Trap. Just that easy. Then I can fusion summon, so I can go into something like Kaleido Heart using like Havness. I could also use the Tortoise right here, and then the Rhino Heart from my graveyard. So now, and then we can add the Crime to our hand. So that's a negate right there. And then I can activate the Sulliek to add something from my deck to my hand. Now, I've already used my normal summon, but if I wanted to extend even more, I could grab Sheeran. Right here, during your main phase, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, send one monster from your hand to the graveyard, then send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. So if I want to extend even further, I can do that, or I could grab Havness, which will be a hand trap for my opponents. Let's grab Sheeran, right? Because I want to be able to basically do some craziness, right? So I'm gonna activate the Sheeran right here, summoning this onto the field, and then I'm going to send the Medora, and then that milled 3 more cards. So would you look at that? A lot of shit in my graveyard set up, right? Now I don't really have any level 2s that are like crazy insane to revive back, but now I can go into Dweller and Sprite Elf. So I'm going to go, let's go this plus this into Sprite Elf. And I can revive back the Merly, which isn't going to get any effects, but it's a-okay. Set my Crime. And the cool thing about Crime, look, send 1 monster from your hand to the graveyard. I could send the Herald of Orange Light, why not? I could also set this card right here, that way if they pop it, I mean, because it's a dead card in my hand, if they end up popping it, like with a Harpy's Feather Duster or something like that, basically I get to play, right? So Gravekeeper's Trap is going to shut off their graveyard. I have a special summon negate. I have a card that can spin something back from the field. I also have a Sprite Elf that can allow me to start milling on my opponent's turn, and then also a Tier Limits Crime, which is a Omni negate. Oh yeah, and then I got Shufflers in my graveyard. So first thing I'm gonna do, flip this Gravekeeper's Trap right here. Now my opponent's graveyard is shut off. Alright, so they are going to activate Mount Sylvania. What does this do? Let's read. Something that a lot of players on Master Duel do not do. You can send 1 plant monster from your hand or face-up field from your side of the field to the graveyard. Choose 1 Sylvania card from your deck, place it on top of the deck. Okay, and then once per turn during your opponent's main phase, or during your opponent's end phase, I mean, you can excavate cards from the top of your deck. If it's a plant type, you can send it to the graveyard or place it on top of the deck. I don't care about that effect, so I'll let that go through. So he's going to send a card right there to the graveyard, and then let's just activate Sprite Elf to summon out my Merly. Activate that Merly effect, which will mill 3. And would you look at that, I hit Rainbow Bridge Salvation. So running 3, that's why it's powerful right there. So now check this out. Now I don't have to discard my Herald of Orange Light. Now I can get access to a monster negate, and I'll show how I'm able to do that, right? So Gravekeeper's Trap right here, and then I can discard this, the turtle, because it works the same in my hand or in the graveyard. Then I can get access to either a Miller, or I can get access to something like Elgato. So now I have another monster negate that's in my hand this time. And he's just going to set this card face down. He activates this card right here, tributing this plant monster. And guess what I can do? I can negate it with Rule Colossus, and then send 1 tier limits from my hand or face up field to the graveyard. Do I want to do that? I could trigger off a fusion summon by doing that, but do I want to do that? Probably not. What I would prefer to do, you know what? That's actually better, because this is actually a special summon. So yeah, I'll trigger that. Why not? Trigger that, and then I'm going to send the Merly so I can get a fusion summon in. Activate Merly, and then I'm activate the Kaleido Heart right here. That'll allow me to send his fusion summon, his field spell back to the deck. And then I can go into Draco Stapelia. And since I already used Rule Colossus, I can shuffle it back into the deck. The effect is already gone off. So very, very easy. Now look at what my opponent ends on. Nothing. Now just imagine if he was going to continue to make plays. I could absolutely stop him with Draco Stapelia. I still have my monster negate here. Still have Omni negate here. And then I also have follow up here. My opponent's graveyard is turned off. And I have shufflers in my graveyard to be able to shuffle back stuff from their graveyard if I feel that their graveyard is too powerful. Now what I'm going to do right here is just go ahead and activate my Medora while it's in their end phase, and then just shuffle back some stuff that I think needs to be back into my deck. So let's shuffle back. Let's see. Let's go Kelbeck. Let's also do Suliak, Scream. I'll do both Screams, why not? And then maybe 1 Rhino Heart. Sometimes I do like to shuffle back some tier limits so that way I can boost the consistency, so I'm not just shuffling back bricks. And then would you look at that? I put Suliak back and ended up drawing right into it, which is a very good card. So I'll just go ahead and set that. If I want to, I could start milling with Gravekeeper's Trap by sending Elgato. I could also basically put my field spell and then draw whatever card I want. So I could draw Havness if I want to, which is probably like one of the better cards. Or I could have drawn Rhino Heart. Rhino Heart would have basically started popping out for me. But I don't necessarily need to. Look, I still got Sprite Elf Diviners in my grave. So I can just go Diviner, activate, and then send Kelbeck, activate Kelbeck right here. This will allow me to set a trap from my graveyard. Let's see. I always want to check to see what traps I have. Yep, I do want to set one. I'm going to set the Imperm directly from the graveyard. activate Shadow Beast. It'll allow me to draw a card. And then from here, go and Baron the floor. And I can still mill. Like, I sent Kelbeck intentionally. I can still mill with the Guido. So if I wanted to do even more like summons, I could still do more summons. Matter of fact, let's show it. I can show you better than I can tell you. So let's just do it. So we're going to send a Guido. And then we're going to add, let's add Kelbeck. Kelbeck's a good hand trap, so we'll add Kelbeck. Then we're going to activate a Guido. And then we can send cards from my deck to the grave. And my opponent has 20 cards. Sometimes I'll send cards from their deck if I don't have a good win condition and I feel like I can't beat them. I'll send cards from their deck just to deck them out. So I'm going to send some cards, and then I can activate this Merly effect right here. And then I can also activate this Havness. So now I can go into, let's go Millennium Eyes Restrict with the Havness, and then we'll do King of the Swamp, why not? And then I'll go into Kid Kalos using Merly, plus the other Merly. And if y'all couldn't tell, this is pretty much GG's. So I could pop something on the field if they had something on the field. I can add a card. So add a tier limit from my deck or hand, or send it to the graveyard. I'm not going to activate that because I don't want to pop one of my own cards. So let's add, let's see. Let's add Merly. I have Havness in hand. Yeah, so now look at my board. This is turn 3. Imagine if I was playing against somebody, them trying to play through all of this. Like, I'm still just kind of crazily building my board, and this is a very OP board to build. Like, this is why this deck is so powerful. Now, it doesn't look like this when you're playing against an opponent, only because you're breaking down their board while they're trying to play, and a lot of the times they just end up quitting, and you don't even get to build your board like this. But this just shows why this deck is like so powerful. A lot of people always say, like, how is this deck powerful? Like, you have to know what you're doing. You can't build a board like this if you don't know what you're doing. Now, what do I mean by if you don't know what you're doing? Okay, let's take a look at this, right? So y'all can see, right? Let's say I couldn't attack and I had to pass turn, right? Sprite Elf can revive something, but before I revive something with Sprite Elf, more than likely I would clear something off my field right here. Got a monster negate here, monster negate here, Omni negate here. We got a spin back right here, a pop card right here, Omni negate here. We got a monster negate there, which was set from the graveyard, I might add. We have another monster negate here, and then our opponent's entire graveyard is turned off. Like, they can't special summon or activate effects in the graveyard, so that's shut off. We also have a spin a monster back from the field back to the hand with Kelbeck. We also got monster negate with Herald of Orange Light, meaning that, like, crazy amount of monster negates, crazy amount of plays. Like, this is every single thing on the field. Like, literally, this is like OP. My opponent only has 2 cards. I've been playing, I still have 5 cards in my hand and all this advantage, and my opponent has 2 cards. I have 23 cards in my graveyard, meaning that I can shuffle shit back and still make plays. My opponents can't. The only thing that really makes this hard to beat for your opponents is when you're playing against another tier limits player. If you're playing against somebody who's not playing tier limits, the only way they can really compete with this is if they're playing an anti-tier limits deck, meaning a deck that forces you to banish cards whenever you try to mill, decks that interact with your graveyard heavily while you're trying to play, like DD Crow, just a bunch of cards that are basically anti-tier limit cards. If they're not playing anti-tier limit cards in their deck, you're cooking them damn near every time. Like, you're pretty much cooking them. They have to play anti-tier limits cards for them to be able to compete with this deck, right? Hopefully y'all understand that. So let's just pass turn so y'all can see how this deck interacts. So y'all can see what all kind of happens. Now, I think this is like the funniest shit ever. So, being able to see what they draw. So he draws a Rika Gamma right here. He's going to activate this card right here, and look at all these effects that pop off. Right now, easiest thing to do is just read what the fuck this shit does. Right, that's the most simple way to do this. Just read what this shit does, and then we address that accordingly. Right, when you activate this card, you contribute one plant monster, add one Rika monster from your deck to your hand. If you tributed a monster, you activate this. When you activate this card, you can add one plant monster. Well, yeah, let's let them do that. Why not? Bro, did y'all see that? They just pass turns because they can't do anything, bro. Like, what? Bro, what's the point? Like, what can you really do? That's the real question. What can my opponent really do? Like, they can't do nothing, bro. Let's do it again. Let's just pass turn again. Let's just see. And then he draws a Mount Sylvania. Now, this is where I'm expecting him to, there you go, put his Mount Sylvania right here. And let me show you how easy it is to deal with his Mount Sylvania. I'm just going to activate Medora right here. And I'm going to shuffle back Kelbeck. Let's also shuffle back Elgato. Let's shuffle back two Rhino Hearts. And then we'll shuffle back one Scream, right? Or you know what? We'll shuffle back Beast. And then pop his field spell with my field spell. Effect never even got off. He never got his effect. Look. Passed turn again. Passed turn again. Now look at all this advantage I got. Bro. This is insane. Like this is insane. Let's pass turn again. Why not? I just want to see, like, if they attempt to break my board. And I know how it's going to go because I got way too many, like, Omni negates and way too many negates. Like, they're not going to even attempt to break my board because there's just too much going on right here. Too easy to deal with. And if they were to try to just, like, summon a monster and crash into my Millennium Eyes Restrict, I can still interact with them without them doing anything. The second they activate a monster, Suliak. Then I can send Kikalos, mill 5 with Suliak. and that frees up a space to go into something else, which could have been like Rule Close or something like that. Start milling. That would also trigger off Kaleido Heart to spin something back. It would trigger off Polareno to pop. So it makes it so hard for them to actually play through this. And there are so many negates. Now, y'all saw this board was pretty much built in turn 3. Most of it was built in turn 1, and then I just kind of insanely built it on turn 3. And that's after breaking my opponent's board through their turn, like them trying to play through all of this shit. So this deck is like insane. Activate Baron de Fleur. Very simply just pop this, and of course no graveyard effects. No graveyard effects whatsoever. I can deck my opponent out if I wanted to. And that's another thing about this deck, is to be able to just deck your opponent out is like one of the coolest win conditions for this particular deck, and I can show how that is done. So activate this right here, and I'm going to shuffle back. Let's shuffle back. Let's shuffle back Medora, both Screams, and then we're going to shuffle back. Let's shuffle back Sharon. And then one of the Maxis. Why not? Alright, now the reason why I wanted to do that is so that way I can activate Gravekeeper's Trap to then discard the Elgato right here. Add to my hand Medora, and then activate Elgato to mill, and then I'm going to send cards from my opponent's deck to the graveyard, and then I can activate my Merly right here to go into Rule Close. So I can still make plays. Now, special summon negate back on the field, monster negate, special summon negate, omni negate, spin back, revival level 2, plus it protects Rule Close plus Draco Stapelia because it's under the arrows. I got omni negate with crime, monster negate right here, and then also, and this is a every turn monster negate. And then Gravekeeper's Trap shuts off my opponent's graveyard, and then plus the shufflers, which I don't really have a shuffler in my graveyard, but that is not too hard to not fix. All I gotta do is just end my turn, and a shuffler will be in my graveyard. So all I gotta do is just pitch this card. So yeah, shuffler will be in my graveyard, and I can pretty much just deck my opponent out if I wanted to. But do I want to do that? I don't know. I think I've shown what this deck can do. Time to just kill him. So I think I've shown enough of what this deck can do, my boy. This deck is OP. OP. So here's the deck list one more time. Catch y'all on the next one.